Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.
Leave no man behind. It is a phrase synonymous with our military and perhaps one of the best examples found in our next veteran story.
KSN's Hannah Adamson and photojournalist Nicholas Kiefer share his quest to bring his friend home decades after his plane was shot down.
Since he was a boy, Ed Sykes knew he wanted to be a fighter pilot. He joined the Air Force in 1968 and flew 118 combat missions during Vietnam. Despite his incredible accomplishments, Sykes says his greatest triumph would take place more than 40 years later, when he decided he owed it to his good friend Dave to bring him home.
Dave had already jumped out of one airplane. He jumped out of the second one. He got hit on a mission and jumped out, and somehow when he came down in his parachute, the parachute collapsed.
First Lieutenant David Thomas Dinan III was shot down and killed over Laos on St. Patrick's Day, 1969.
The helicopters came in, found his body, and his body was wedged between a rock and a tree, and the pararescue guy couldn't pull him loose, couldn't recover his body.
Dinan and fellow fighter pilot Ed Sykes had been roommates while stationed at Takli Air Base in Thailand. Dinan's death preoccupied Sykes for years.
We knew exactly where he was when he was shot down.
It wasn't until a trip to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial 40 years after Dinan was killed, Sykes decided it was time.
Here I am, 68 years old. I'm going to go and recover those remains.
With the blessing of Dinan's family, Sykes took his first flight to Laos in 2012.
I went to this village, Pansavan, in Laos, and I wrote a report on what I found. Wrote this report, I sent it back to the people responsible for investigating these things. And I think more than anything else, I went on that journey just to let them know that there was some 60-plus years old man out there running around the jungle doing their job.
After Dinan's second trip to Laos, the U.S. government offered to help, locating the pararescue specialist who initially found but couldn't recover Dave Dinan's body all those years ago.
I called him up and I said, well, would you be interested in going back to Laos and trying to locate the spot where you left Dave's body? And he said, Ed, that has bothered me all my life.
In 2016, the U.S. sent a team to find Dinan's remains. After 4 trips to Laos, working alongside 2 governments, Sykes got the call he'd been waiting for. Lieutenant David Thomas Dinan had been found.
I was elated. Dave's 2 brothers called me and said, after we'd identified his remains and brought him back, they'd set up the date of burial at Arlington. They called me and said, hey, Ed, would you give the eulogy for Dave at the ceremony?
Lieutenant Dinan finally laid to rest in April of 2018. Sykes' actions, the true embodiment of leave no man behind.
It was something that I felt was so important because I'd fulfilled this promise to my buddy to get him back home and bury him. And that promise is the oath that we make to our fighting men. It was a highlight of my life.
Now the search is not over for Sykes. He's still looking for 2 other friends killed in Vietnam. If you'd like to learn more about his ongoing journey, we have a link to his book on our website. That's ksn.com. Here for you, Hannah Adamson, KSN News 3.
The Devon James Injury Lawyers here with our Veteran of the Week, and that's United States Air Force Colonel Ed Sykes, who proudly served our country during Vietnam and in fact flew over 100 missions in an F-105. On behalf of all of Kansas, thank you so much for your service.
You bet. And all I can say is I've got 2 friends still laying on the ground in Vietnam, and I'm going to work. We're going to bring them home. Let's bring all of them home.
Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.